I think it's probably a good time that we'll get started here. The last thing I'll just say the last few things as a repetition before I kind of hand off to James to go over the agenda. Again, any questions anyone has, please throw them in the Q&A chat, and we'll do our best to answer those kind of live in the chat itself. If not, we'll try to address them after the main presentation is done or after the webinar. This is being recorded, so you'll have access to this later as well. And then just maybe as a quick little introduction, my name is Jim Riherd. I'm the one that's been speaking mostly right now. I'm the VP of Operations at MeasureSqaure, so I'll be part of this presentation today. James Wisdom, our Senior VP of Strategic Partnerships, is in here as well. He'll be running the meeting along with me. And we also have Brian Dang in here. He is our Junior Project Manager for the CRM itself. So he is a big driving force for this project and software. So he'll be joining in later in the presentation as well. So James, if you want to take over and move on to the next slide, I think we can officially get going here.
All right, thanks for the intro there, Jim. We'll go ahead and get started here with today's webinar. So first of all, I just want to say I appreciate everyone joining us today. I know it's hard to carve out time from your schedule to attend webinars like this. As Jim said, we'll try and keep this as informative and brief as possible. We know you guys have a lot going on. So today we're going to have more of a conversational approach here, and it's really going to be about finding the right fit for your flooring business in the CRM space, right? Because there's kind of a lot of players involved, a lot of moving pieces. So for today's conversation, we're going to zoom out all the way and just start with overall, how do you even evaluate if your business needs a CRM, right? Maybe you're not using one currently, or you've tried some in the past and found they weren't a good fit. How do we even start that evaluation process? Then we'll go ahead and talk about what a CRM should be able to do for you in your business. Then Jim and I are going to talk about some of the pitfalls of adopting a generic CRM. Then we'll go into what sets MeasureSquare CRM apart from the rest. You know, obviously, for those of you who've used our estimating software for a while and maybe attended the previous webinar, you might already have some good insights into what some of those items are. Then we'll go ahead and throw to Brian Dang to talk about some of our customer success stories. Then we'll open things up for a Q&A. I think this will really be a good portion of our time together today. You know, we want to make this more of an ongoing conversation between the MeasureSquare CRM user community and ourselves. And then Jim will do a quick wrap up with the MeasureSquare 8 Spring update. So with that being said, Jim, you feel like we're ready to go and we can jump into that first topic?
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right, excellent. So, you know, first of all, Jim and I just want to talk about how do you evaluate if you need a CRM, right? And as Jim kind of alluded to earlier in the call, Jim and I have quite a bit of experience with this one on a personal, professional level, right? So, you know, when I started with MeasureSquare about 10 years ago, we did have an in-house CRM, and it was fine for its time. You know, we built it ourselves. There was a lot of great features to it. But when we internally started having these evaluation conversations, it became clear to us that maybe we needed to explore some other options. So I think this is probably the biggest one from a traditional sales CRM standpoint is how do we manage our leads, right? And are we doing that in an efficient way? You know, because with existing process, maybe we're doing a lot of things via email or phone calls and so forth, and just kind of tracking things more in an old school way. The efficiency gains on a CRM coming into play, you know, we can say, you know, how do we get those leads and document it, right? Instead of, you know, oh, I think we were talking to this individual, this designer, you know, this architect, you know, I can't even remember where we got in touch with Jerry. You know, maybe it was at the Surfaces show 10 years ago, or maybe, you know, this account exec had a real good relationship with them back when they were, you know, working with a manufacturer, so on and so forth. And that's, you know, you can get pretty far with those educated assumptions or kind of gut checks for how you're arriving at things. But when you really start tracking things meticulously, it can give you actionable insights, right? And I think this is a big one for all of us on this call. You know, we're all busy, we're all drowning with 1,000 things to do in our day to day. You know, getting the follow up and kind of best practices baked in is huge, right? So that's one thing you want to look at is, you know, just being kind of brutally honest about where your business stands. Are there gaps or efficiencies in the time it takes to execute these steps? So, Jim, do you want to add anything to that?
Not too much. I think that's a really good kind of assessment, and as James alluded to, because we do like to share our own experience because we're obviously on a different side of the equation. You know, we're all in the flooring industry as a whole, but we're not a flooring company, right? We are a software provider for you guys, but we still have a lot of the same problems. And one of the uh, James kind of alluded to, and we'll probably talk a bit more in a couple other slides, is when we are evaluating our own CRM, how do we all do these processes? I imagine when James started, I think you could probably count the number of employees in the U.S. office probably on his hand. It's
Correct.
not it's not the same case now. You know, they were in a very small office, still in our same building, but it was in the earlier days, right? A lot of companies started out with a single location, for example. But by the time I joined, it's a little bit bigger, but still, probably half the size we are now. And we realized that if we wanted to expand, a lot of these kind of things we're doing manually or by hand or in like a very archaic system, we're not going to scale. And that was one of the big things that were part of our evaluation is a scalable solution. And essentially, the tools we're using were becoming a bottleneck. Even if we built them ourselves, they were becoming a bottleneck. Just from things go out of date, need to refresh things, get new up to date versions of things. So I think that's a good assessment of how you some questions to ask or things to consider. So we've gone through the same things as well. We kind of prove them internally too.
Mhm. Yeah, good points there, Jim. I think the scaling, right, as a team grows, as your business becomes more successful and prosperous, you know, you can't do the same things at scale with 50 people in an office that you can when there's five and everything is, you know, you almost get telepathic sometimes when you're a small team that's been working together for ages. But as the team grows and you're onboarding people, you know, we don't want to make assumptions that those best practices are going to be fully locked in the way they might be for a veteran on our team. And ultimately, right, at the end of the day, the key business output is when you have that data, you can really extract better conversion rates out of your leads, right? You know, if you say, oh, I think, you know, this channel's giving us a 20% hit rate, you might find out that a new ITB site, maybe your hit rate goes up 4%. And if you track that cleanly in your system, you'll actually be able to get, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but you can track those insights. So
Yeah.
with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump to our next evaluation criteria. And this is a big one, right? The relationship maintenance. So again, right, with more of an old school approach, you know, a lot of us older folks will be happy to get on the horn, talk to someone, you know, check in, you know, how's business, how's the family, how are the kids? And that maintenance is kind of second nature. But again, that type of behavior, while very effective, it might not be scalable, or you might just need kind of almost like a digital secretary to remind you like, hey, it's been 12 months since that job. You know, maybe we should check in with our point of contact on that account, that type of a thing. So I think really the balancing act here is finding the right tools that support your workflows, but also, you know, help you optimize for those much needed human touch points, right? Where it's almost more of just like a little reminder to reach out, or tracking, requests or changes, things like that. Obviously, for those of you who've worked with me over the years, you know the support side of the house is a big part of my day-to-day life here at MeasureSquare. I can confidently say that without a CRM, we would not have the ability to track and grow the product with our user feedback over time without having a really dedicated, simple to use support area. So,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously for commercial flooring subcontractors and other folks in the flooring space, that might look more like tracking, issues on a project level, maybe is more of a better analogy. But ultimately, it's just you need to have some kind of scaffolding in place, right? And I bet, if we all sat down over a cup of coffee in the conference room and kind of went around and talked to our AEs and our project managers, a lot of folks probably do have some room for improvement as far as getting the cadence of those reminders in place. I know a lot of times we can get trapped in kind of a reactionary mindset, right? Where it's like, okay, this fire came up, I'll put it out. And that's effective and obviously needed at our level, right? When we're doing commercial projects, nothing survives contact with reality without a few curveballs getting in there. But the idea of being able to proactively work on those relationships and maintain it, this kind of gives you a space to accomplish those tasks. Is there anything you want to add to that there, Jim?
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to it too. It might be part of another slide, but as we've been talking about, like the customer relationship leads, and as we kind of get more closer to the aspects of our CRM, a lot of that really relates to like the project management. That a lot of our, I'd say like a lot of the times, like lead tracking, customer relationship might be closer to the retail side of the equation. But then when it comes to the commercial side, it's going to be on that project tracking side. And we do project tracking ourselves, which usually like internal initiatives that we turn into a project versus like our actual sales and lead tracking. Obviously, for commercial jobs, the project itself is kind of can start out as a lead. You submit your bid, you win it, and there's all these moving aspects throughout the life cycle of that. And that's really what the CRM in the commercial world should be centered around, is that whole project as a whole from beginning to end. And that's a big important aspect to keep in mind when you're evaluating CRM, is like, does it solve that for you? Does it track all these things? Does it track the pricing requests? Does it handle an SOV according to how the flooring world does? All those kind of very specific customized aspects to our work versus, a generic sales tool maybe.
Yep. Good points there, Jim. We'll go ahead and jump to our last evaluation criteria. Of course, there's many more items that we could have easily filled out probably a couple hours of time on just all the evaluation criteria here. We kind of picked the big three as we see it based off of our experience working with you folks over the years. So this is a huge one, right? I know we all understand the power of data as far as helping making informed decisions. And a lot of times I know the educated guess is probably the currently implemented gold standard for a lot of organizations in our space. And while a lot of times we can rely on that veteran experience to get us close to the mark, especially in the commercial space, right, where it's a game of, single percentage changes add up quite a bit at this level of the game, right? And being able to track insights from, whether it's sales performance or, customer preferences, trends, and product that's being moved, being able to, being able to accurately kind of see not only where you're doing things right, but maybe where there's room for improvement. Sometimes you might find that an AE or someone on the team is a high performer, but maybe you start noticing a trend where, maybe this person's really, really kind of getting to a new level of success in institutional work versus hospitality, things like that. The more data you can use to drive those decisions, the better you can kind of leverage the talent stack you have there at the office. And this is a big one for us as well, is just being able to see, in a data-driven way, what's moving the needle, what's driving success, and where are there areas of improvement that we can hone in on. It's huge, and it definitely gives us a very valuable tool for goal setting to kind of drive, our own culture for, increased an increased performance and focus on key tasks. So that's definitely something to consider there, versus kind of the more ad hoc way of approaching decision making. Did you want to add anything to that, Jim?
Yeah, slightly unrelated, just because I see data analysis here, and it made me kind of think of data security. I don't think we have a specific data like slide for this. Brian will allude to it later, likely with the customer, but just something that comes to mind when people are evaluating is that we have plenty of folks. We all utilize Excel and Google Sheets and certain like local files, but a CRM could handle a lot of those things in a better way. But something to keep in mind, depending how your workflow is, if it's kind of closer to the more analog local files, literally pieces of paper and documents, is, how safe and secure is your data? Me coming from the operations side, that's a huge part of my internal job, and also part of the job with our customers, is to ensuring that data is safe. And that, that can be related to, how it is stored, on a server or in our cloud. Generally, if you're going to be using a CRM, it's going to be housed in a very secure data center, essentially, along with backups, versus a local Google Sheet or a local Excel file that, if that employee happens to leave good or bad terms, that file might magically disappear on purpose or on not. If that user or customer just has a lot of files in general that are always going to be on a local machine versus somewhere in a more structured, organized place. If that person, they retire, or whatever it may be, if there's not a great process involved that extracts all that information, it can get lost very easily, or possibly taken to the wrong place. So one of a good aspect is like, how secure is your information? And not necessarily from a security standpoint, for just like if something happens. So that's one of the big another item to keep in mind is, the structure of your data and where it's stored. Is it in a scalable and secure place versus compared to what's out there?
Yeah,
just want to add that in there.
Good point, Jim. So we'll go ahead and kind of pivot a little bit here to our next topic, which, what should it do for you, right? What should a CRM actually accomplish? And there's going to be kind of some overlap or synergy between this and the evaluation criteria. But a big one for the sales side of the house is lead management, right? Centralizing that information, automating capture processes, tracking interactions. That's a huge one. And I think that directly applies to the project level as well, is tracking communications, interactions, and updates on information is huge, right? It's not just enough to have a CRM be a glorified filing cabinet. It's like you want to be able to infer where you're at in the project as far as key steps being completed and achieved. This is a huge one for, I think, all of us, right? Prioritizing leads based off of criteria, right? That's a huge one for us, being able to filter and automate and sort things by, whether it's being a member of a certain buying group or network, or, being a firm that maybe, you're hunting a national account like a Target department store, or, a chain of restaurants or so forth. Being able to have some kind of automated process to filter those things versus having a paid employee sitting down and filtering those opportunities is huge from an efficiency standpoint. And, once you have these kind of insights and automations in place, being able to focus on where the human element really gets you the maximal returns, right? Nurturing those relationships, coming up with unique or novel approaches to convert, or testing different strategies, different communication cadences, things like that. When you're tracking things very specifically and intentionally, you can do things like figure out like, okay, what is the right number of touch points for getting into this new design firm's trusted partner list, things like that. So a good CRM will give you tools and automations that will save your team time. It's not just a space to track what we're doing ourselves manually. Do you want to add anything to that, Jim?
No, I think that's great. That's very a good explanation of what it should do for you. I think that's great.
Okay. We'll go ahead and keep flowing here. So this is another big one, workflow management. I know for myself, it's easy to get pulled in 1,000 directions. And, I feel like a lot of things, in life, like I think of workflow management kind of as the business version of like setting key bills on auto pay with a credit card or something, where it's like, I know I need to keep the lights on. How do I make this smooth and easy and replicatable without me having to put too much brain power to it every month? Like we all have our strengths. That's not necessarily one of mine, but luckily, a good CRM will give you, a lot of lift in that area. You could say, well, I want this PM to reach out, this many times per week to the procurement team while we're getting everything coordinated. Or, okay, my ISM is going to go out and start talking to the folks in the trailer. I want to make sure that's like, okay, how did that initial call go? Do we have good rapport? Do we feel like we're on the same page? Do we have, time that we anticipate, or are other trades, going to take up some of our time, things like that. And it really just comes down to being able to systematize and automate success, whether it's tasks or notifying other teams, especially in our modern era where, not everyone's doing cradle to grave estimating anymore. So as we get more siloed, there's a lot of efficiency gains, right? If we have an estimator sitting down just estimating, 7 to 10 hours a day, they can do a lot of great quality work. But getting those notifications and handoffs and kind of day-to-day comms linked up together in an automated way, it makes those silos connected in a way where it's much more efficient versus ending up with a bunch of wasted time with crosstalk and, hey, did you see that text? Hey, did you see that email? Versus, hey, we're in the we're in the Cedars-Sinai Hospital project, and here's everything just laid out, and we can all kind of access that same hub. So the collaboration element is probably undervalued by a lot of folks because it's not something that's immediately apparent until everyone's comfortable with the system, but it's huge for us. I think, especially for Jim and I, it probably lets us punch way above our weight class as far as how many departments we have our hands in on the day-to-day. Just being able to tell at a glance, like, hey, I don't have to ask for a 10-minute meeting. I can track the event log or this project and be like, okay, I know where we're at. We've got our check-ins. We're on track. We're on time. So the workflow management is huge. It's not necessarily the most glamorous element, but when it comes down to providing immense value for all of the users, it's probably the biggest lift across the board. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jim?
No, I think that's a great point, and I think the way you said it's like not the most glamorous, but it's such a key aspect. And for any of the folks who are in here now that are evaluating or using a CRM, if you probably might have already had this conversation with Brian or another team member, but this is one of those key aspects that will be rolled into our CRM in the very near future. One of the great things about getting on the CRM at an early time is that you get a lot of direct access with us as we kind of get to pick and choose what key aspects need to be added to the CRM. We've been with CRMs a long time, and how they look, on day one versus year 5 is obviously going to be drastically different as it gets built out. And it's great to be there in the early days, so we can get feedback on, hey, what's critical versus nice to have to do a little bit later on. So we know something like this is so critical. We use it ourselves all the time. So this is something that's very key. And sometimes I get surprised how many folks or accounts are doing a lot of these tasks that can be automated or in a more manual way, and it just eats up so much of your time. it's important, but it's also tedious.
Yep.
So it's a great tool to keep in mind and strive for to use.
Yep. Good points there, Jim. We'll go ahead and keep going here. And this is a huge one for me personally. Being on the strategic side of the house, having analytics and reporting is huge. I would say this is probably something that I like to geek out on more than just about anywhere else. But it's definitely a great tool set to have when it comes to tracking those interactions, seeing what sales activities are effective. And this is probably one of the most interesting things that when you really start using a system, if you get a strong baseline of where you're at before you implement a CRM and then really start tracking things rigorously, sometimes you get insights that aren't very intuitive. Like you might think subjectively, oh, this method that we've been using for years is our secret sauce, and it actually really moves the needle for us. And it could turn out that activity, while it appears meaningful, the data might be pointing towards it being essentially glamorized busy work. Or another area that we find incredibly useful is from a marketing standpoint, right? Now, granted, I know our business models are quite different there, but being able to analyze different marketing channels and effectiveness is nice as well. I would say more for the flooring subspace, it's more likely to be analyzing trends or, hey, we think these 10 SKUs are most profitable to install. They lay in clean. We always feel like we can get a little more oomph out of our team when it comes to, the yardage or square footage installed with these systems and these types of projects. You can track those types of things and really start refining your system to where over time, you stack up a couple 1% to 4% gains across multiple departments. And in a few years, all of a sudden, you're able to punch way above your weight class as far as the complexity of projects or just your time management and overall customer service persona, as far as like how you're perceived in the space, as far as responsiveness, things like that. It can really help you on that side of the house when it comes to making decisions there. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jim?
No, I think that's great. I know we're about to transition into the kind of pitfalls of generic CRM, so I'll save some thoughts on that.
Yep, you got it. So this is a huge one, right? Because obviously MeasureSqaure is not the only CRM game in town, far from it. But, we're just going to dive right into the key pitfalls for most folks using a generic CRM. And just, the flooring industry is its own special little place. And we're not selling widgets, right? As much as it might be an easier path in a lot of ways, I'm not selling nuts and bolts, and we're not just moving this many pallets of these things from one spot to another. Everything we do lives in the world of projects and service and installation. So a lot of generic CRMs might be great for, like, I don't know, a car dealership, right? Where we're moving units. Are we hitting our margins? Is this sales manager's team more effective than the other one? Yada yada yada. For what we do, there's very little correlation. I mean, obviously, you want to make sure your sales execs are hitting their numbers and so on and so forth. And it's great to see all of that stuff, and we can definitely track all of it. But really, if it's not project focused, it's probably not a fit for the flooring business. There's too much going on under the hood of what we have to deal with day to day, to where a generic CRM is only going to get you so far. So, for managing a sales team, a generic CRM might be a good fit. But if you're really looking to optimize your entire business and really get as much of a modern tech stack across all departments, operations, install, field teams, etc., having everything hosted in one space is going to be much more beneficial there. So that's just kind of the initial pitfall from a generic CRM standpoint. Obviously another one is cost. You're typically going to pay through the nose for a major, top 5 CRM. So anything you want to add to that, Jim, or should we keep rolling here? That way we can be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we'll try to kind of speed this up a bit if we can on our end, but I do want to add in, like, I wasn't too sure what we mean by generic CRMs is,
Like a Salesforce or,
yeah,
Zoho, HubSpot, things of that nature.
yeah, and just so you guys know, we've used all of them. We currently
Yeah.
use one of them in house. It works good enough for us, but even this off-the-shelf generic CRM has pitfalls for us. We are in a lucky situation where we have development resources, and we can do a lot of our own customization and integrations to compensate for the lack of something being built for us specifically.
Correct.
But that's not the reality for most of our customers. It's very usually hard for a non-software company to have development resources and utilize them and understand that side of the world. It's very tough.
Yep.
Developing software is hard. And so that's what we mean by the generic side of it, is that it didn't have you in mind. It's trying to, be a solution for a lot of people by doing a lot of things good enough versus doing the things that matter the most to you very well. And that's the mindset we want to have with it as well. I know James mentioned the pricing, which is always going to be a sticking point for any business decision. But I do agree. Most of the time, those are going to be more expensive. I wish our price point for our CRM was what we got for what I pay for our company CRM.
Sure.
Especially when I look at the bill, I'm like, okay, we're doing a good job there, hopefully. But
Yep.
yeah, so just a little clarity on the generic stuff versus industry specific ones for us.
Yep. I'm gonna pick up the pace here quite a bit. I know we're only slated to go about another 10 minutes, and I do want to make sure we have some time for Q&A. So we'll hit these next couple of topics pretty rapidly. So another pitfall here is, as Jim kind of alluded to, lack of customization. For those of you who've worked with us over the years, I think you already have a really good understanding of how much dedication we have to, delighting our users with the level of feedback to product changes. That's kind of our core mission on the product side, is just building the best mousetrap we can based off of end user feedback. So obviously, when it comes to working on a flooring specific CRM that's project focused, we have all that estimate data, so we can leverage that and make a bunch of workflow improvements based off of your team's direct feedback. So in the same way we spent, decades at this point perfecting our estimating software, we view the CRM as the same type of project, right? We want to bring that same passion and enthusiasm for giving you guys what you need to the table there. So that's really what we're talking about when we say customization, is just making sure it's maximally effective for our space. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one here as well. Integration hurdles. This is another big one. You might have some behemoth of a CRM that's globally known, but are they going to talk to your other flooring specific softwares, right? Whether it's accounting softwares or things of that nature, or catalog scrapers, product lists, document management tools, areas like that. As you guys know, if you've worked with us, we're very open to integration, and we understand that every flooring business has its own unique software stack that they use in their day-to-day. And our goal is to make sure that we facilitate whatever your business is currently running will be able to play nicely within our CRM and estimating systems, to where you get as much lift as possible without having to completely reinvent the wheel for how your day-to-day operations are running with your software systems. So with that being said, those are a few of the pitfalls to keep in mind. I'll throw out a shameless plug for our support team. Another one is good luck getting a hold of some of those megacorps and getting a meaningful answer in any kind of decent time frame if you do have feedback, questions, or problems or concerns. Whereas with our support team, obviously you can call in, email. We'll pick up the phone and help you guys out and make sure everything's running smoothly for you there. So with that being said, really quickly, we'll power through this. I think, quite a few of you probably attended the first CRM webinar where we discussed these elements more in depth. So we'll kind of hit a quick highlight reel of what sets us apart. I think we've already been really circling around it in a lot of key ways. The project focus is huge. Being able to work with that estimate data that we have from our estimating software and then leveraging it across the board as much as possible is huge, whether it's creating and tracking POs, work orders, quotes, and bids, dealing with pricing requests, automated schedule of values or progressive billing, and then syncing with accounting systems and so on. Really, that's kind of the end goal here, right? Is maximizing our effectiveness with the existing data, making sure your teams can talk together nicely, and making sure that we can play nicely with other systems that you guys are using out there. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and I think, Jim, we should probably blow through these just on like a click-by-click basis to get some Q&A time together, / giving Brian and you a chance to talk about your other updates. I know for some of you, you likely do not have the time to stay on longer than the slated 45 minutes. I'm happy to stay on a bit longer than that if some of you do want to continue on to discuss things more in depth. So, Jim, I'm going to kind of call an audible. What do you want to do here? Do you want to throw to Brian quickly? What do you think?
Yeah, why don't we switch over to Brian's part of the slide so we can cover those like specific use cases that might be very beneficial to hear.
Okay.
And then we can jump onto my part, and then we're obviously you and I can stay on at least until
Okay.
12 to answer any other questions.
Yeah, so we'll make sure and leave plenty of time for the Q&A, but we'll go ahead and click through here. So it's all stuff we probably can infer or may have seen before, quoting from diagrams, creating nice professional bids directly from those diagrams. And just as a friendly reminder, we will be sharing this recording. We can also share the slideshow presentation with your team. So if you do want to, go through this a little bit more in depth and reach out, maybe ask some questions, schedule some one-on-one time together with us, we can definitely make that happen for you. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and throw over to our product specialist, Brian Dang, and he will go ahead and get you some of those key insights from those success stories. So Brian, you just let me know when you're ready to go to a different slide, and I'll be, I'll be your secretary over here.
Yeah, cool. And we can even go back to that previous slide, just we could have a blank slate. But thanks for handing it over, first of all. And second off, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you guys. I already see a few familiar names in the webinar, so that's always nice. What I wanted to do was take a brief couple of minutes to talk about, the few success stories that we've already seen since launching. Since my first webinar in early February, and I'm sure a lot of you remember that or were there as well. Since then, I've had a lot of chances to meet with a lot of flooring contractors, seeing how our CRM can plug into them, and also exploring their unique workflows and sets of challenges. So what I wanted to do was look at two of the real big success stories that we had that really represent, a large majority of the people coming in and talking to us. And we could look at how they made that transition into our CRM and what kind of benefits they saw out the gate. So James, we could switch to the next slide from here.
You got it.
Awesome. So the first story that I want to look at is a really common case of people moving from those generic CRMs into a flooring-focused and targeted solution. And before I even get into this story, switching CRMs is no easy task. Very often you have to unplug dozens of different parts of your day-to-day, rewire them to a whole new system, all while keeping up your normal business. It's almost like learning 3 systems at once. And typically people plan for this process to take months. But with this, they were able to see benefits before their contract with their previous CRM even ran out. And so the user that we're looking at is a large foreign-based company out of the East Coast. I can't mention specific names just due to NDAs and anything like that, but they were running their whole operation on Building Connected for ITBs, MeasureSqaure for takeoff, and Salesforce for day-to-day management, and then plugging that into QBO for work orders, purchasing, and accounting. And just by the way, when I say QBO, I mean QuickBooks Online. And as with any growing company, managing teams gets harder and harder as they get more and more business coming in. So they did what any of us would naturally do. They went onto the internet and they looked up CRM, and that's where they got Salesforce. It's a basic CRM that's really mainly useful for keeping track of contacts and communicating with your team, but it was missing all that flooring-focused functionality. And even worse, now that they had the CRM in place, everybody was taking an extra step in their day to copy and paste things from one system into the CRM and then back into the next place down the line. some of the salespeople at this company spent 60% of their day just copying info from our takeoff into Salesforce to make a bid, and then over into an invoice in QuickBooks Online. And within 1 month of our first conversation, and when I say first conversation, I mean just them emailing us and asking us, what does the CRM look like? They were able to switch into our CRM, which costs less because it's more focused. It's not bloated with all these enterprise level, features like forums and blog posts. And it did even more, with our seamless integration between our own takeoff software and QuickBooks Online. That bid that took up 60% of their salespeople's time was now no more than 10 minutes out of their day. And on top of that, they get a ton of flooring focused features like the AAA building that we mentioned earlier, change order tracking, which I know could be a headache. And best of all, that installation schedule that we have, which lets you see all of your different installers and plan out your projects minute by minute. With that, they're able to move their work orders out of QuickBooks and on our system as well. So really keeping everything in one place. And after purchasing at the beginning of this month, our onboarding has already been able to move their projects onto Salesforce. With our team, we are able to handle the heavy lifting of copying projects over and moving data like products over. And now they're just waiting for the clock and when the Salesforce contract expires. And we could switch to the second case. James?
You got it.
Awesome. So the next one that I want to look at is all those users that come from using no software to getting their first CRM. A lot of people starting with no software get really nervous about purchasing a CRM. The big question for them is, why are we paying for this software? How is it going to make me more money? And so we could take a look at this company and see how their team was running it before they stepped into our CRM. Aside from MeasureSquare, they were communicating and tracking projects through Excel, Outlook, Word documents, and endless emails. And with that setup, they were constantly running into problems like losing track of where a project is at, losing pricing info in the sea of emails that they're having back and forth with all their vendors, and stalling projects when one person's out of office and no one can see, what emails are coming into them. And for these use cases, picking up a CRM isn't a good process. We're talking less than a month. Our first conversation, they're already seeing value. They gave just a few of their workers to us to onboard and really work closely with us. And they're already able to start running their first projects with us. And from there, the rest of their team just picked up speed having those internal champions. By our first onboarding, they were already seeing benefits because we showed them how to track all of their conversations and documents and to-do lists in one place. By our third onboarding, they were already fully up and running, creating quotes, tracking pricing, scheduling labor all in one place. And with such a quick start, they get to use the rest of the onboardings as a chance to figure out how to run their operations even smoother. It's really a conversation with our team and theirs to figure out how best to use our CRM. And on top of that, they get to use those onboardings as a way to show us any features that they want to have added. We are a growing company and this is a 10 plus year commitment. So we always see it as a great chance to have eyes into the industry as it moves. And so the question is, did it make them more money? With our system, they're able to handle more projects at once. Those projects are handled quicker and more smoothly. If someone drops the ball, you can instantly see where it's been left off and pick up from there. And there's never an instance where they're losing track of pricing and they turn around a month later and all their margins are squeezed out of a project because everything gets more and more expensive. And they're also able to schedule projects as efficiently as possible. So with that extra output, we're taking a team of 5 and we're bumping it into a team of 10, all for the price of a single CRM. And that covers the two main users that we run into, but I want to emphasize that we've seen companies large and small, some in different areas and focuses like multifamily, and I've seen many with those software stacks of 7 different products that they're all juggling and doing double entry between. And the main thing that I want to drive home is that our team will walk through this with you. We've seen all sorts of issues, and it's not on you guys to worry about how and if the CRM will work. Our team will work with you to find out how to make that business as efficient as possible. And those are the real key takeaways from our success stories. I can hand it back to Jim. We can do some Q&A, or we can talk about those MeasureSqaure 8 updates.
All right. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you sharing some of those stories. It sounds like there's some pretty impactful outcomes on very short timelines. So that sounds pretty ideal to me. I wish our own CRM deployments could be successfully measured in a matter of a few weeks. I know Jim and I spent many months commiserating on that process. So really appreciate you sharing those stories there. So Jim, did you want to quickly cover the spring update, or did we want to do the Q&A first? Your call there.
Yeah, I could get through this in maybe a couple minutes, just so if anyone was looking forward to this or wanted to know, yeah, then we can definitely do the Q&A. Brian, I think there's a couple of questions in the Q&A if you want to go ahead and answer those as I go through this. It'll
Yeah,
probably be a good
gotcha.
time saver. Cool. All right. So everyone, just I'm going to go through some key updates for MeasureSquare 8. Mainly related to the commercial version, and we're likely going to push this update out next week, likely on Wednesday. Don't hold me to it in case something pops up and we have to do it on Thursday, but Wednesday's the goal. So just keep an eye out for that. And I'll go through this as quickly as I can as well. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me directly after the webinar, if not during the Q&A. My email is jim@MeasureSqaure.com if anyone did not know. All right, James, go ahead and jump to the next one. This is just be a title slide. So the first main update that I wanted to quickly go over is Blueprint Text Search, essentially what most people refer as to OCR. James, you can jump to the next one. And basically what this is that we've now, if you're, I don't mind calling this company out. They're down the street from us in Pasadena. Bluebeam is a very common software that a lot of people use with us as well, generally in conjunction, because they are a great PDF company. You could search their documents very well. We kind of took a page from them, along with customers asking for this often, is if we could implement some sort of OCR functionality, and don't even worry about the technical side. The whole point of this is so you can search the text of the blueprints that you're bringing in. And we've gone about this a couple different ways, but essentially is that you'll be able to import, when you import your blueprints, you'll be able to select what you'll see on the screen here. Sorry, it's a little bit busy, but I just wanted to show something that shows all the different aspects, is what we just call OCR beta. It's our first version of this. We'll be doing some improvements as time goes on, but this will essentially allow us to scan documents and then extract the text from them. And then we'll also be doing some improvements that even bypasses OCR and just reads text directly on a PDF, which will be even more accurate. But essentially, this does a very good job already. This does add a little bit more time to your import, so it can scan all the documents. We'll be working on doing that in the background in the future. But if you don't need the OCR, or you don't need it for every single page, you can turn this off in the import so you can import faster. But then once you're in the software, you're able to right click on a blueprint and do the OCR one by one or after the fact. So if you need to get through the importing process quickly, you can skip it, but still do it later on. But you'll see on the right side in the room view, or if you hit the search button in the toolbar, it will jump you to the area where you can type in the searching. So we've done some work on the room view to support a better search. And this search will also involve the products that you create in MeasureSquare itself. And then you'll be able to, you can copy and paste and highlight things from the PDF. So if you want to copy and paste room names, you can highlight them, Control C, Control paste into the product menu or the room naming menu as well. So that's just a quick explanation of the OCR. So it's a really good function. And the last thing I'll say is when you find a search result, you'll see a highlight on the right side. You double click on it, it jumps you to the page or tab. All right, that's my last note on that. James, you can jump to the next one. Hopefully you guys can understand me because I'm probably talking very fast. The next part is our blueprint management. This is kind of a quality of life update, and we've essentially are adding a tab view where you can organize your blueprints in a much better fashion. James, you can jump to the next one. Just so I can show you guys a quick screenshot. This is a big visual update. So we've added to the right side of the property view where there's a new tab view. We've also applied most of these features to the normal pop-up one that you'll see at the bottom left. So we're kind of allowing the old school way of navigation along with the new one. And essentially, this is a big visual update. So you can, probably similar to Bluebeam or other PDF companies, where you can see all your blueprints on the right side. And our developers spent a lot of time on this to make sure this is snappy. You can navigate very quickly, and it does a great job of all the things. A lot of the things you're drawing on the blueprint, the rooms, the product colors, markups are going to show on that right side. So if you're a visual person and you're like, oh, I know I did this kind of work on this page, you can easily visually jump to it. If it's just a PDF with highlights on it that you did in MeasureSquare, you'll see those as well. So it's a really great way to navigate on the right-hand panel. And then there's you can do a list view, you can do the image view that we see as well. You could bookmark pages. So if you're working on like 10
Yep.
out of 100 pages, you could bookmark them just like you can a web browser. So you can easily jump to those versus going through a long list or searching that long list. And you can also use this for organization. You could now add all these tabs or blueprints into folders, so it's much more organized. So you can do that you can organize them through phase folders, just through, hey, I've done estimating on this one versus just, scope of work documents I'm not actually using MeasureSqaure to handle, and it's just there for reference. So it's essentially just any folder structure that you're used to, just like the product catalog, but you'll be able to organize those here as well, and then search them, obviously. All right, I think that's the last part on that. James, okay, this is one that James and I are excited for.
Oh yeah,
we've heard this request for a long time, and we finally fit it into this release. This is one of the reasons this release took a little bit of time, is that it took a lot of work to do a lot of these things, even though sometimes they look simple. But essentially, this room has about 34 walls. They're all the exact same. They have tile going up the wall to about 3'6", 1 foot of tile wrapping around the whole room, and that's it. Now, a lot of people don't need to print 34 wall views just to represent, hey, this one wall looks like this. Copy and paste throughout, just like you copy and paste this wall profile to the whole room, so you don't have to do each wall design one by one. Now in the software, when you open the property view on the right side, there's going to be a checkbox that says typical wall. You can check that, and then when you have the same selection in the print menu, is you can just print the one wall you have selected. I added a note here to say, hey, this is a typical wall in a room unit A5, number 502. Basically all 34 walls look like this. So you can save paper. It's a lot more concise on what you're trying to tell the installer. Also, in case you're thinking this, you can select more than one typical wall. So if there's half the walls are one way, half the walls are another way, you can select as many walls as you want to be printed, and then you can add notes like this to call out which walls technically look like this versus something else. So it's a pretty flexible design. We've been hearing this for a while, especially from the tile. The guys who use a lot of our customers use this for heavy tile jobs. So this is a great way to, cut down on the paper, cut down on the just long documents, make it much more clear and concise for installation. So very excited that we're able to get this feature in there finally for you guys.
Yeah, as a drafting nerd, that's huge for me. Being able to have, one typical, and then hey, here's the accent wall. That's huge. So
exactly,
I'm stoked on that one. I think it's going to be great. So we'll go ahead and we'll pop to the next one here.
Yep, I think I'll be wrapping up with one quick one. It'll take a few seconds. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. So the last thing I want to do is a little bit more, or my second to last slide is a little bit under the hood. We've done, sorry, go back one more, James. The project load speed. We've been doing some work, and when I say we, it's not really me. I'm not coding it, so I'm not trying to take credit. But our developers are putting a lot of work into projects are getting bigger as blueprints get better quality, hopefully. They're usually bigger in size. So we're working on improving the loading speed. So in this build, depending on the machine specs, essentially if it's a multi-core machine or supports multi-threading, the loading time will increase in certain aspects. Hopefully you don't notice it because it wasn't loading too slow. But if you load, we've done some testing on like very large projects that might have like 100 plus pages that might take 10, 15, 20 seconds to load. We've seen in certain cases where that gets cut down to 3 or 4 seconds. So it's about 3 or 4 times faster, just depending on the project size and the machine. So we're working on that, and hopefully in the future we'll be trying to apply that to other aspects such as saving and even estimating, depending on what's possible for the technical side of the equation. So if you ever have the large projects, hopefully you guys will see some speed improvements on them. Last slide, James, you can jump to for me and just go over some quick runner-ups for what made it to my main slides. And this update is also going to include, you can now apply products such as linear products directly to the door and window frame, so you don't need to draw segment lines around it anymore. You can apply products to the actual frame. So if you happen to have a wall that's let's say, just make it a little bit more extreme, a foot thick, that foot space of the door frame you can apply products to now. It's not just a simple hole. You have the option now to add products behind and below elevation, so they're no longer just creating a hole that no product can go to. So if you need certain prep or products go under an elevation, you could select that from a property view. For transition pieces such as door sticks, if you have 2 3-foot doors, and then and you're going to have an 8-foot stick that you order, and that 2 feet is excess and you can't use it anywhere, you can now ignore that part for the calculation purposes. It's a little bit in the weeds, but I think some folks will know what I'm talking about. But it will help specifically the door transition be estimated better. You can now do add-ons to labor items. You could, in the worksheets, show the add-on association, which just means if you have carpet with 5 add-ons, those add-ons will be directly under the carpet line item versus just individual line items. So it will have that tree view. So you'll be able to see that association in the worksheet now. There's an eagle eye view. Yeah, very good. The eagle eye view is just essentially a navigation update where you can have the blueprint at the top right, and there's a little box over where you're zoomed in on the screen, and then you can navigate using that. So if you're really zoomed in, you'll know in reference if you're at the top right or middle of the blueprint. We've done some coving enhancement for concave walls and corners. You can now add the URL of a product into the product details. So instead of uploading the image directly, if you just want to reference the URL, you can copy and paste that in there too, and it will display. And then the last item is the sell by option, commonly used for like sell by box for tile. If you're using that for labor, that supports rounding now. So if you want to round up to the nearest like half today, use that option now through a decimal placement. So that's all I just want to burn through. I probably took longer than I planned to, but thanks for listening. I know we're at 12, but we're more than happy to answer any questions that are in the chat if they have not been answered already.
Okay, so with me running the slideshow, Jim, I don't have easy access to the chat queue for any questions. So if you and Brian want to tackle any of those or throw to me if needed, I'm happy to stay on the call for the next 10 or 15 minutes if there's any questions. Of course, as Jim said earlier, if you do have any questions either related to those MeasureSqaure 8 updates, or if you want to learn more about the CRM, maybe get started and see a presentation from Brian, or get started on your own pilot evaluation, we can definitely help you out there as well. I just want to say thank you to everyone for your time today. I know we went a little bit over. I hope you guys found this session useful, and we'll be happy to stay on and answer any questions.
Great. Yeah, I know Brian answered some. So one of our customers asked how well does this product integrate with a company that also handles other architectural finishes as well as flooring, like cabinets and tops. So if anyone's familiar, we do have a stone product as well. So any software we build will be integrated with the CRM in the coming year, if not months. So anything that we integrate with, anything that we build will be integrated to the CRM essentially as a hub. And then outside of our own software, we're more than happy to discuss integration. We're in a really great position where we want to play nice with others, unlike other companies in our space. Unfortunately, not to name anyone specifically, but we are always open to integrating and bringing in that data. And sometimes it can be just as simple as an Excel. And I think Brian answered that a bit. Essentially, someone also asked, like, how well can we handle very large billion-dollar companies integration? The revenue of a company doesn't exactly dictate if it's easy or hard to integrate with. We've been doing this for 20 years. Integration is almost our middle name. So there's really not an integration case we can't handle. We're a software company. It's kind of what we do, and we're very veteran in it. So if there's any more specific questions regarding that, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give you a little bit more precise answer. Yes, we'll be handing out this recording for anyone who missed it. Everyone who joined here will email to you. We'll be uploading it to YouTube as well. So as a plug, always subscribe to our YouTube channel. Vast majority of all our content video-wise gets uploaded there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just as a friendly reminder, if anyone would like to receive a copy of this presentation as well. We're happy to send that over. That way, if you want to
Yes.
share that with anyone else on your team and other departments for kind of internal discussion and so forth, please feel free to reach out. You can let any of us MeasureSqaure team members know, and we'll be happy to send that your way.
Yep. And yeah, and Jim said we can stay on. It looks like a lot of people are starting to leave and exit back to their day. So stay on for a few more minutes. I'm not seeing too many questions in chat yet, so not a problem. And then I know I ran a couple polls during the meeting. So for the poll, when I asked if anyone used a plan to implement a new CRM or replace an existing CRM, we had a really good skew of answers. About 47% said yes to a new or replacement. 23% said no, and then 29% said, as I put it, depends if the new one is better, because that's usually if you're using something. That's how I think. I'm like, is it better? So for the folks, for the folks who answer that, we're really, obviously you're here, you answered, so we assume that you're pretty interested. Please reach out to us, especially Brian Dang here, if you want to meet and go over the CRM, kind of have a discovery call with us to find out what your needs are, and if we could solve those for you. So we always appreciate the feedback. It gives us a good sense of what our customers are looking for. So appreciate you guys answering those, and please, we'll reach out to you, I'm sure, but if you're really interested, feel free to reach out to us as well, and we'll get the conversation going.
Sounds good.
All right.
So, yeah, no new questions at the moment. Maybe we'll wait another minute in case anyone's typing something right now.
Sure.
Okay, I think I got a question here. Let me read it myself real quick. Hey, Brian, I'm going to assign this to you. I'm not sure if we need to look into this, but Donald asked a good estimating question in relation to transferring from the estimation software to CRM, I believe. Donald, I believe however you estimate it is how it should come in. If there's an issue with that, Brian will take a look. So might be a good one, Brian, for you to follow up with after the webinar if needed. And if you need help with it, James and I can check with it.
Gotcha.
Great. Thanks for answering that, asking that, Donald. We'll get back to you very shortly. We might need to double check on it internally. All right. Oh, Donald, I'm going to try to answer this since we can wait another minute. Can you make the product calculation methods locked so they transfer to the worksheet and CRM? Currently, they default to program calculation methods. Where am I missing something? I'm not sure if you have a different calc method set up for a product in CRM versus estimating, but the estimating is essentially the tool or calculator. So that's always likely going to be the setting or the calculation it comes into. Once it comes in, if it comes into some sort of worksheet, it's going to reference the original. It's going to reference the method it was told to estimate as. Depending on the use case, that might be able to be overridden, but it'd be likely a manual process, because if you need it in a different process, you always want the source data likely to be the correct one versus having it overridden by something else. So I always look at this is probably not developer may not love me to say this, but I always look at MeasureSqaure as a calculator. Very, very, very good calculator, but it's a calculator to a degree. So the thing that does the calculation is a calculator, and you want that to be how you want to calculate it, essentially. I'm not sure if I'm answering that without more context, but that will.
Any other questions there, folks?
See, I think we got one more from Carl. Are you able to break out quantities horizontally instead of stacked vertically? Carl, we might. I'm not sure if you refer to the CRM or the estimation, but that might require a visual aid for us, so we understand exactly what section you're talking about in which version. But if you want to shoot Brian Dang an email, and you can CC James and I, then we could see what you mean and maybe what the use case is as well.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for asking the question. We'll be happy to get you up to speed. Anybody else with a question here?
Yeah, I think. All right, I think that's. I think we're winding down there, so I think it might be a good time, James, to officially end it.
Sure.
And then again, if anyone, Brian will do some follow up with Carl and Donald for those to get those more specific answers to you guys.
All right, looking forward to it.
All right, excellent. Well, if anyone not on Team MeasureSquare is still on the call, thank you again. We really appreciate your time today, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the next MeasureSquare webinar series. All right,
excellent.
We'll go ahead and we'll end the presentation here.
All right, thanks everyone again. Appreciate your time.